The recommendations, and actually I'm going to fly over them because, of course, we have now two excellent panels who will spend time discussing what needs to be done in the context of the digital client and the digital bank. What are the things that we can do together? We have a hushpot of recommendations. The first one actually is about regulation, and it's a very normal thing to say. It's to make sure that Europe, when it does regulate, takes into account the digital environment and the change in technologies. And a lot of the rules are still paper-based, and that's just one of the little steps that need to be adopted. But we also know that for a lot of the advisory services, we need to have game changer, and we're quite happy actually to have later today Olivier Garçon telling us his vision of where regulation at the European level should move. The second recommendation turns around taxation, and that's because today, as we have heard already this morning, banks continue to play a very important role in funding the economy. A lot of banks have difficulties these days in the macroeconomic environment. It would be really good if, when banks make investments into fintechs, in-house investment, these investments would be relevant for their research and development investment, and would be able for tax deduction. The third recommendation turns around the digital identification, because the digital economy needs digital identities. And I think here Mr. Viola has already said that Europe is leading, and that's really nice. But we have to take advantage of that. We have to continue to push standardization across borders and to make contractual agreements possible across borders with e-identification. That really would give a big push also in the investment and asset management domain. The fourth recommendation, which I don't think you can see, the fourth recommendation turns around the regulatory sandboxes. Everybody likes the sandboxes, except maybe the French, because in French, the sandbox is the bac à sable, and that's where the little boys hit each other over the head. But in every other language, the sandbox is actually quite positive as a notion. And what we see is lots of little ecosystems that are evolving in Europe. And it's difficult to define a public policy. And our recommendations would be for the Commission to watch what is happening, for ESMA and for the ESAs to follow what is happening, and to work in cooperation with the sandboxes. But also the recommendation that once a company leaves the sandbox, then we should have a functional approach to rules, meaning same activities, same rules. Then we have a recommendation on education. Roberto Viola already said this. Europe has an excellent back record in terms of the level of education and research, but we can and should do a lot more in terms of financial literacy and IT literacy. Why is that? It's because ultimately we want, of course, allow people to have a fair access to financial services. And we also need to make sure that people understand better how they spend and save. And here is really a big push from public authorities that would be very helpful. And then last but not least, it is about trust. And the relationship between the bank and the client is fundamentally a relationship of trust. And hence, it is very, very important that the banks stay ahead in terms of cybersecurity, and to stay ahead, they need cooperation amongst the banks, but also cooperation with the supervisors. And I was going through this recommendation, I was thinking, okay, what's the common theme? Because I kind of like, have to kind of like order in things. And actually, the common theme is cooperation and collaboration. Because each and every recommendation that we have put on the table is not something that one institution can take forward and do. Most of the recommendations that we have on the table today are addressed to the European Commission to work with the member states, to the member states to work with the companies, to the companies to work with the clients, to the banks to work with the banks. And actually, it does reflect, I think, what the sharing economy, the collaborative economy requests from us. It is more of a horizontal approach between the different players. And so I'm very, very happy to first thank the teams at Credit Suisse and UBS, Eva, Ariana, Lucia, Christophe, the assistants here, Sarah and Nadia, for helping us with this discussion paper. And then invite our first panel here today. I'm going to introduce Wim Meijs, an old friend, Brussels long-time expert, back to the Netherlands, now back in Brussels, leading the European Banking Federation. He's accepted to be the moderator here this morning. Please, Wim, come up. And I think all the panelists are wired. And since this is a Swiss event, it is very well organized and they all already know where they have to sit. So please come up here and I hope you will enjoy the discussion.